Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the glistening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea.
We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always justice. These are the powerful words of Amanda Gorman's inauguration poem. Hello, everyone. My name is Soribel Henao, and I am so excited and proud to welcome you to our 2021 Black History Celebration. As one of the inaugural Diversity Fellows, Professor of Educational Leadership, and member of the Black and Latinx Faculty and Staff Association, we welcome you. Without each and every member, this would not be possible. Thank you, BLFSA. I am thrilled to be part of such an important endeavor at Queens College. Our theme, Sankofa, reminds us that in order to understand our present and ensure our future, we must know our past. Today, we welcome you to learn, be a part of our history beyond February. We look forward to an amazing program.
Welcome to the program, Where Do We Go From Here? Mental Health for CUNY's BIPOCs in Times of Crisis. For today's event, we will be having our guest speaker, Maureen Pierce-Anyan. So Maureen has a master in philosophy in psychology and has worked at Queens College for over 25 years. During that period, she has been an adjunct in the Africana Studies program, where she taught the Black family and the social psychology of the Black community. She has directed the Department of Education's Teacher Opportunity Corps program, which is a program designed to produce high quality and committed teachers of color by providing them with a comprehensive set of supports. Presently, Maureen serves as the Director of Minority Student Affairs and Pre-Professional Advisement. Her counseling activities include the creation of support groups for Black males and Black females. For decades, she served as the group's facilitator, in which many of these group members are still in communication to this day. Drawing on her training as an evaluator, she wrote a comprehensive report on the Black presence at Queens College in 2016, and in 2018, she wrote A Closing Door, Black Admissions at Queens College, which was published in the PSC Clarion. In 2019, she testified before the CUNY Board of Trustees about the shrinkage of the Black student populations in the SEEK programs and the impoverishment of the Black Studies program within CUNY. In 2015, she received the Outstanding Non-Instructional Staff Award from the college. She's a member of the CUNY Black Faculty and Staff Association, as well as the QC Black and Latinx Faculty and Staff Association. Beyond these already impactful contributions to the Queens College community, Maureen has served in many different parts of the college. Notably, she is also the advisor to the Minority Association of Pre-Med Students, or MAPS, since 2008. And she's also served on a variety of boards and committees, such as the Queens College Health Professions Advisory Board. As a little bit of a fun fact, during Black History Month in 2015, Maureen designed the program titled Malcolm X From Demagogue to Icon, which featured a short play that she wrote. And so it's good to have her now in 2021 as part of this Black History Month event. Maureen, can you please join me here?
Thank you. That was a wonderful introduction. You got a little yeast in there, but thank you so much. I appreciate it. So what I'm going to do is try to address my topic, probably in a bit of a unique way. So I look forward to presenting it to you and definitely getting your questions and statements and feedbacks and stories at the end.
Definitely. We will have some time at the end, about 15 minutes. And the program will be a little bit extended. We do plan to go from 5 to 6:30 to also allow the time for those questions. So be sure to put those in the chat for us.
Okay, they didn't tell me that, but okay. All right, I'm delighted. First slide, please. Where do we go from here? Mental health for CUNY's BIPOCs in times of crises. The words I want to emphasize here is mental health and crises. Mental health for me is not the absence of pathology. It is the presence of positive characteristics such as optimism, self-regard, resoluteness, resilience, and the ability to trust and the ability to interact comfortably with others. So that is where I'm coming from with that. Time of crisis, well, we know what the crisis is. Next slide, please. Okay, COVID crisis, COVID-19. We know that Blacks in general and Hispanics have died at a little more than two times the rate of other groups, whites in particular. But that general United States average cloaks over the fact that at points in DC it was 6 times the rate, and in other cities it was 3 times the rate. So that is the average rate. That is not the per state rate at any given moment. And as you know, we passed the sad marker of 500,000 deaths. I think it was yesterday. 500,000 people. And we're making up a good percentage of that if you add the Blacks and the Hispanics. And also, I think the demographics show that we're slightly younger than the mean for the nation in terms of when we die. George Floyd, we see here on the right, and that provoked the explosion in protests that we saw throughout the spring and into the summer. Polls estimate that between 15 and 20 million people marched, and in all of the 50 states, and from backwater rural places to urban center. It is popularly seen as the largest protest movement in United States history, which is quite something. Next, please. Okay, so what was the impact? What is the ratio of deaths per 100,000? So we can see that actually it is the Latinx at, let's say, 23% who had the most deaths when this stat was taken, and the Blacks who had 20. And we have the whites who had half of that, okay? And then we have the Asians who had 8.4. Now, of course, this raises, why such a differential impact on the Black and Latin communities, and what difference does that make? And a lot of it is the type of work Latinx workers do and Black workers do. They are in the public. They're not able to shelter in as many other types of workers are. I believe that the statistic is that 30% of all white workers were able to work remotely and have done so since March. Also, we know that Blacks have lacked access to local health care, and they have also the highest rate of being uninsured, and so they don't go to doctors because it's prohibitive. So that's another factor. And then, of course, as was told in a mantra fashion in the media. They had coexisting conditions. In fact, that was used in a way of somehow saying, well, it's not all our fault for the discrepancies in our institutions. I point you to this survey. Almost 1/3 of Black Americans know someone who died of COVID-19. I certainly know that's true for me. I know it's true for most of my friends. And when that dying is personal, in fact, I learned of the death of a student from a few years ago who had gone on to become a chiropractor, and he was 47 years old, and left, two twin sons, etc. And others who were in their 40s and 50s. So it's not always the elderly, which is what we tend to visualize when we visualize the dead from COVID. And a lot of these were still in the position of contributing to the labor force and to society in general. Whereas we know that a number of the white people who died were in nursing homes or assisted living homes, and they had pretty much come to their ability to make economic contributions to the society. A lot of people said that was part of the reason that the death rate being so high among Latin and Black people and people who were no longer considered important to the economy slowed down the response rate to COVID that would have happened otherwise. Next slide. Okay. The Holmes-Rahe stress scale. This has been around a while. It's more than when I was a grad student, I used this. What are the most stressful life events? It's a rating scale. You can get a hold of it. And the more a person checks, the more numbers the person checks of these means the higher number of stress events that they've experienced in their life. And an increased stress score is correlated with negative physical and emotional outcomes. Depression, high blood pressure, and even more serious mental illnesses. So in addition to, although it's not on this scale, one of the things that we're looking at when we're looking at COVID for our students is they have become major caretakers of their loved ones. And they have assumed major responsibility for younger siblings in the home, many in terms of helping them with their schoolwork. So they have, in addition to their regular lives, even more duties and obligations. Next slide. Okay, so what are frequent student responses? Disengagement. What does that mean? That the things that they were involved in, since most of our students are involved in being students, that they lose interest in their schoolwork, and it's hard for them to stay motivated. Disconnection. It means that sometimes to psychologically protect themselves in the home, they have to insulate themselves from certain family members or some of the things that are going in the home because it's so emotionally overwhelming. And then they are disconnected from their friends and family and going, being outside and making human connections, as opposed to what I call the postage stamp Zoom connection. And this leads to distractibility, inability to focus, depression, anxiety, disinterest in schoolwork, anger, and restlessness. And what are some of the behaviors that we see as a result of this. TV, watching TV, watching YouTube videos, playing video games. I have had several clients who tell me they play until 3 and 4 in the morning, averaging maybe 5 hours a day playing video games. Social media use. I think there was a recent study among young people talking about that they check their social media 600 times a day. Texting and talking, excessive sleeping, eating, and also inability to sleep, and substance abuse, maybe pornographic addiction as well. So these are some of the things that our students are coping with in response to these two crises. And if they weren't there, they didn't come just in response to this crisis. They were probably escalating in response to the crisis, but were there in some sense before. Next slide. Okay. Queens College total undergraduate enrollment by race. Okay. As you look at this table, what you'll see is, and I've just taken 9 years here, the changing demographic at Queens College. So we went from 27% Asian in the fall of 2010 to 36% Asian in the fall of 2019. And Black stayed pretty much the same. In fact, they stayed pretty much the same for 30 years. But as incoming first-time freshmen and transfers, there actually has been an increase in the number of Blacks. So I do believe that you can find that in the IPEDS data. For Latinx, we see a significant increase in their presence in the total undergraduate enrollment. And whites, we see a significant decrease in the presence of in their presence at the college. Now, I wrote down here minority majority rule, the Middle States Accreditation Report, because I found that very odd. When Queens College opens the report, and on its first page, it summarizes itself as a minority majority school. But that only makes sense if it's in contrast to a majority school. And so we are signifying there that we are deviating from the norm, which was majority. And so the diverse ethnicities that are now a part of the college is recognized, but they are not seen as the majority, even though we just saw the statistics that whites are not the majority. And this raises questions about how are we structuring the school in terms of its administrative organization, its faculty composition, its student composition, its curriculum, and other things. Next slide. Oh, and you'll see on the bottom that in fall 2018, 2019, white faculty was 63%. That way supersedes any of the percentages of students, ethnic students here, okay? And a number of these faculty have been at the college quite some time, for decades, really, many of them. I think Queens College is one of the senior colleges that has the most senior faculties, in other words, full professors and associate professors across the units, because they've been there for some time. Okay. Next slide. Okay, stereotyping of Afro-Americans. I just thought that this picture was outrageous, so that I'd share it with you, because it kind of captures a lot of the stereotypes of Blacks. He's lazy, He has inordinate or excessive drinking, eating. There's a whole big bucket of Kentucky Fried. There's the watermelon, of course, that's associated. And there's something he's drinking, maybe a soda. So unhealthy diet, which then takes us back to people's certain perceptions of the COVID responsibility. Okay. Then you'll see, and you must say, what in the world is she thinking of? Latino immigrants come to the U.S. with negative stereotypes of Black Americans. A new study in the South shows. And in that, the reason I brought that up, because I think it's very interesting as Queens College increases its Latino population, for us to think, well, what is the perception of the different ethnic group of students towards each other? And how does that make for a feeling of community on the campus? And also, how does that affect the dynamics in the classroom when it comes time to, when the professor says we're going to form projects, would you join a group? Who's going to likely be invited to the group or not? Or if they come to the group, perhaps get a cold wind. So I think that's something that we haven't dealt with as a college. I served as the co-chair of the Foundation of Excellence Diversity Committee a few years ago. And in our report, what we found was, yes, Queens College does have these, the diversity in these racial ethnic groups, but there is very little interaction between them. Very little communication. Everybody is, in the words of one of the committee members, it's balkanized. Everybody stays in their silo, and so to what extent just being on the campus together is changing their perceptions of one another is something that remains to be assessed. The next one, which I think is illuminating as well, Black identities, West Indian dreams, and American realities. Mercy Waters actually documented the extent to which West Indian peoples and African peoples try to, especially as they're just arriving in the United States, whereas other groups try to minimize their difference from the dominant population, let's say the white population at that time. These groups try to show how different they are from Afro-American Blacks. They emphasize their accent. They will make sure whenever possible to indicate where they're from, maybe in their dress, but they don't want to be associated as an Afro-American. And from my groups that I, ran over the years, I know that this is true and that it has to be overcome, in terms of your firsthand experience. Anti-Blackness in Asian American communities. And now we realize that Queens' student body is 36% Black. And of course, some of you who are elderly will remember the riots that occurred in California after the shooting by the Korean store owner of a young Black girl. And then there had been a history of Blacks robbing stores in the Korean neighborhood and back and forth and back and forth. But the relationships became extremely hostile and went on from there. And so what is the difference in terms of anti-Blackness in the Asian communities? What do they believe about Afro-Americans? Well, that they don't stay in two-family parents. They don't work hard enough at that. That they don't work hard and they're not disciplined in terms of their studies and even in terms of their employed work. They don't work as hard as they could be, that they are uncouth, interested in pleasure. So they, in response to that, they do not encourage their children, their college students, to interact with Black students. And of course, if we imagine what this causes in terms of the Black students' perception, and I've had many because I've worked with several pre-meds and several computer science majors who have told me that when groups are to be chosen, often the professor actually has to put them in a group because they're not naturally invited or called to participate in a group. And they feel like humiliated and like pariahs. And so that's something in terms of mental health, seriously, that we need to address. In the Latino American study found that, let me see, I wrote the actual characteristics, if I could find it. Yes, this is just coming off the plane. This changes drastically among Latinos who are first generation in the United States, and their opinions become far less negative. But when they come off the plane, and I'm not going to repeat it, but I think many of you remember for all immigrants, Malcolm X's quote about what is the first thing they learn as they disembark from the plane. So the perception that Blacks are not hardworking, they're not easy to get along with, they cannot be trusted, was very prevalent in this group. 78% felt they had more in common with whites than Blacks. The irony, because this study was conducted in Durham, South Carolina, is that the whites actually had more positive opinions than Blacks than the Latinos at that point. Next slide, please. This just came out, and I think it's a powerful article written by an Indian who said, "Many of us are unaware of the special circumstances that ease our entry into American life and of the bonds we share with other groups." So what he's really speaking to in the Asian and Indian case is how that as a group, they are used as the model minorities to contrast with all the inadequacies of Blacks who have been here and not able to achieve what they are to achieve. And he's trying to dispel many of those assumptions because there are real structural reasons and practices that gave them the leg up. Now, also in stereotype research, there is Dr. Claude Steele. Some of you might have heard of him. And I wrote about this in my report. In fact, I wrote about quite a bit of these stereotypings and perceptions within the classroom, what works and what doesn't work, and Treisman's work and so forth. Steele showed that through many studies at the University of California in Berkeley, that when individuals are confronted with a test or a situation in which they are in danger of confirming a stereotype, namely that they're intellectually inferior, for example, about their group, their performance plummets. He called this phenomena stereotype threat. And he also goes on to say in his book, Whistling Vivaldi, How Stereotypes Affect Us and What We Can Do About It, Black students at predominantly white institutions are daily put in the situation where they must confront stereotypes of Black intellectual inferiority. Next, please. Experiences of Black faculty and staff. We've had years now, especially with the 60s and the opening up, at that point, a serious increase in the number of Black faculty and Hispanic faculty and staff on the campuses, predominantly white campuses. And these are pretty confirmed generalizations of what the Black faculty experiences is. Isolation, marginality. So for example, I think in the chemistry department right now, we have one Black professor. And I don't think we have any on the tenure track in physics or environmental science or some of the other STEM subjects. So that they are, they're in that department, but to what extent there's interaction with their peers and support is another thing. They also experience microaggressions, stereotypes, depreciation. And this is from other faculty, sometimes other staff and students, especially the depreciation of students. The assumption is, is this person really able to teach me chemistry or really able to teach me biology or whatever? And so there is a hesitancy and sometimes even an attempt to get out of the class. These professors experience inadequate material and professional support. I think we just lost a distinguished professor to the University of Tennessee because they supplied so much more material and professional support. Now, of course, we understand that City University is a public university and it doesn't have the money bags that a lot of these places have. But one wonders if we could do a little better with the material support and maybe much better with the professional support so that staying at the university would be more of an attraction. I think it's ironic that we lost actually a MacArthur Genius Award person. She left Queens College. And I know my own sister who years ago left to go to the Ohio State University because she was going to study who at the time was Manning Marable in their Africana Studies department, which was filled with Black scholars from all over the world. It was an attraction to her. Okay, so they often feel, and this is staff too, over-scrutinized, overlooked, underappreciated, misunderstood, disrespected. A few years ago, the PSC did a study on race in the faculty and their mobility, their retention, etc. And they found that of all groups, Black women received the fewest promotions of any group, regardless of their years of tenure at the university. And that and also Blacks received tenure at a lower rate than other groups. I think if you're all following the news now, this is just an aside, and you can think what you will about how relevant it is, that Cornel West has been at Harvard has declined, to offer him tenure, but instead offered him an endowed chair, an increase in pay, and a 10-year contract. But then the question becomes, why don't you want to offer tenure? Tenure guarantees that you can stay till you want to retire. Okay, next slide. Higher education's response to mass protests. So these are some strong language titles here. Higher Ed's toothless response to the killing of George Floyd. After George Floyd's killing, many colleges are promising to do better for Black students. Will anything change? George Floyd's college students seek action on racism, not lip service. So what they're talking about here is they want more than mere solidarity statements. They want concrete measures, actionables, as they call, to the university to commit to, and that will reflect that their actions follow their words. So, increasing the number of Black faculty, increasing the number of Black students. I know we've heard that for decades now. Increasing, making more comfortable the climate on the campus. In making sure that the population of the executive administration is representative of the new population of the student bodies. I don't know the answer to these facts, but I raised the question, how many Blacks are on the presidential cabinet? How many Blacks are on the P&B? How many chairs do we have that are Black folks? And how many deans do we have that are Black folks at Queens College? And yet, the Middle States concluded its report with congratulations on being one of the most diverse and have handled so well the diversity at Queens College. So these youth, especially in the wake of the George Floyd killing, are much more militant about what they expect, and also, as we'll see, in relationship to what corporate America has decided to commit. Next slide, please. Okay. So washing your company won't cut it. What that means is presenting yourself as someone that's politically aware, and with it is not sufficient a response to the mass protest. And here's what companies are promising to do to fight racism. Well, before the George Floyd killing, the word in corporate America was corporate social responsibility. But in the wake of this killing, there is talking about corporate responsibility for social justice. And here are just three examples. And here's what I mean about a measurable metric and a commitment of resources to attaining a goal. Adidas has pledged to fill at least 30% of all open positions with Black and Latino candidates. Estee Lauder has promised that the percentage of Black employees at all levels of the company will mirror their percentage of the population of the US. Walmart has pledged to stop storing, quote, multicultural cosmetic products in locked cases. And this was followed by CVS and Walgreens. If you read the article, there's at least 4 more concrete examples. And you can see that this definitely represents a departure from the past in terms of action and commitment. Next slide, please. What is to be done? I love this. Is it time for all students to take ethnic studies? Okay. California legislation AB 1460 requires all undergraduates across the 23 campuses of California State University to take a 3-unit ethnic studies class focusing on Native American, Afro-American, Asian, or Latinx American. Governor Gavin Newsom signed the bill on August 17, 2020. Okay. And you will see as you open up, I left the link because there are many excellent recommendations that have been made by the Queens College Black Latino faculty and staff. Again, they state in their statement against anti-Blackness and for systemic change, they have recommended several things that pertain to what is to be done, not only in terms of ethnic studies, which they recommend a deep infusion of resources and perhaps changing its status from program to department. Because if you're a program, you have no absolute control over who your faculty is. That is decided in the department from which the faculty comes. Like history, if you come, you're hired as a historian, the historian, faculty, dean, chair have to approve of you, and then you can be assigned to work in the Africana Studies program. And each semester, you are beholding to go and find out who in the departments are going to teach what in the Africana Studies program, so you have no decision. Really, how can you control your curriculum and have a rigorous major when you never know who the personnel is going to be? And of course, the resources have been greatly depleted in the program over the years. This I know because I remember when the Africana Studies programs used to actually host conferences, major conferences. They also talk about in the Latino and Latinx faculty recommendations, the absolute need for making sure that the curriculum of the Africana Studies program is not peripheral, but part of the pathways requirement. It is no longer, it was, but somehow it is no longer, none of its courses are central or part of the core curriculum. So essentially, they're elective. You can take it or leave it. And even before then, there was a group called Pre-Industrial Civilization, where you could pick among several courses, and that would fulfill your pre-industrial requirement, and you wouldn't have to learn anything about Africa or Latin America. So trying to reintroduce and add those courses to add vigor, and also as Newsom kind of showed the way here, is these things, this is not a buffet lunch. This has to be required. It's important enough to be required. If our demography has changed so much from what it was 21 years, and if you go back, it's really enormously more than that. By the way, the institutional data, which I'll come back to in a minute, I drew from CUNY Central's Office of Institutional Research, current student data and historical student data, which draws on IPEDS data, which is the data that is collected on post-secondary schools by the Department of Education. There's a trove of information down there, by the way, that you might want to look at. And let me back up a little bit, because I had wanted to, in the slide that said, what is our percentage of Blacks and ethnics, Asians, Hispanics, and white at the college, if you remember that. Yeah, can you go back a little bit? No, yeah, that. I wanted to give you some numbers, because this percentage, you get a certain impression, but if you actually listen to the raw numbers, you get another one. So this is the fall 2019 undergraduate enrollment by race and ethnicity. The total Asian enrollment was 6,078. The total Black enrollment was 1,755. The Hispanic enrollment was 3,918. The white was 5,000 and 61. And because I'm not going to do all of this, I want to raise something up because it's so important in terms of the Black male presence on campus. The total number of Black men on campus is 7,689. The total number of Black men on campus is 713. So what does this indicate can happen in terms of connection, community, interaction, and all the things that meld the people into a community, a college community with shared values. And the grand total of these undergrads, all the ethnic groups, is 16,866. So of that, we have 1,008 Black women, and we have 73 Black men. I would say that is pretty isolated at best. Okay, can we go back where I was? I hope you remember. What is to be done? Yeah, no, go back one. You went right. What is to be done? Okay, so the Black and Latinx faculty has recommended that the Academic Senate create a subcommittee to do a curriculum review. It suggested the creation of a Latinx commission or student body that will have representatives from Black faculty, Black staff, Black students, and that these people will interact with representatives from the administration, from the Senate, from the department heads, from P&B, all with the goal of making the campus more representative of its ethnics on campus, and also to brainstorm programming that would make that happen. For example, come out of your silos. What could we do instead of just having when you have the games on campus and everybody plays the game, is there something collective that we could do that could have interaction, or even use the games in a way that would promote interaction between groups, and other activities that would promote dialogue between groups, forums, things like that. Okay, next slide. Okay. Black college students, CUNY, Black student success. Okay, all of these are graduates in the last, I would say 12 years. And of course, we know Khalil just graduated and got elected in 2020, and Camille just graduated, I think, in 2019. And Nigel was, I think, about 5 years ago, and Noel was 11. But let's look at their accomplishments. He was elected as a state representative, and here I have to, I just can't resist saying that one of the faculty in the SEEK program sent out an email to us folks saying that we need to dig in our pockets and make a contribution to the campaign. And I felt that to hold my head up, I better do that, and it better be more than $5. Olivier appeared in 20 Under 30, Forbes magazine, which identifies outstanding young men that they expect a lot of in the future. He's an MD, PhD. He also appeared on the program Shark to ask for money for his DNA genetic company that he was forming. Nigel, who's an economics major, is an acquisitions analyst at the Stockbridge Capital Group, and part of the Emerging 100 Atlanta, which I think is somewhere connected with the 100 Black Men. And Culotte is past president of QC Student Government, and is applying to PhD programs, I believe. Next slide, please. This is key. Okay, what do these students have in common? Black community on campus. So we have the SEEK program. We have the MARC program, minority access to research careers, and this is funded by, I think, NSF, and the Mellon program, which is funded by Mellon. Now, the Soames MAPS does not fund individuals. It's a club. It gets this little money from student affairs, but it has provided a community for many, many years. Soames was founded in '72, but it's now defunct, unfortunately. A profound community for Black students who are interested in the sciences. They had mentors, they had coaches, they had in their disciplines. I know that Olivier had an outstanding relationship with Professor Holtzman. And they had academic support because these programs fund academic support, exposure. They are sent to conferences. They are financed to undergo enrichment exercises. So they have all those pressures on them. And by the way, two of these, Nigel and Olivier, were in my Black men's support group. And in that group, I like to think that they get validation, they get information, they get camaraderie, they also get a study buddy or someone to go to class. We used to have a rule of trying to put two in the same class together, so that we form cohorts that can support each other and create success. And I must say, the outcomes have been really outstanding when I think of members in the group. In fact, I think this morning, one of your STEM panelists who had been in my men's group for years, Donald Conserve, got a PhD in, I think, behavioral science at the University of Penn, and has just been awarded has invited to come to the University of Washington and is being given advanced tenure. How many people would want that? Okay, next. Next. Okay. This, I couldn't resist. The revolution is my mental health. When I was a young adult, let's say in my 30s, I read an article by a woman who was speaking to her experience of the 60s and the 70s. And what she was saying is that actually, we know there was no revolution, a real revolution, but these were tumultuous times, times of great change. That her mental health came from a feeling of purposefulness, a feeling of confidence and agency and ability, the camaraderie, her ability to positively relate to the people in her group, and also resilience, because they had a lot of setbacks and even physical things to deal with. And she said that more than anything else, she felt made her a whole person. Now, the pictures you see, I love this, is this young lady is about to get arrested. This is part of the George Floyd protests. And this, of course, is a mass movement where never in America, as we've said before, have people come out and as a collective in common purpose to decry extrajudicial killings and also the structural inequality that has been revealed throughout the system, the multiple systems in America. And the last slide is of Bree Newsom taking down, she scurried up the South Carolina flagpole to take down the Confederate flag, which they put up the next day. But in subsequent weeks, they removed it, and that also have created a new South Carolina flag, which I think is such a tremendous tribute to her. Okay, last slide. This is an extraordinary moment. I've never experienced anything like it. The conjunction created by the COVID-19 pandemic and the recognition of the systemic, can I go back, please? Right, racism that has been rendered visible. I am just so happy that I have lived long enough to witness this moment. Angela Davis. Next slide. Next slide. Next, okay. Any questions, please share your reflections and or observations. Thank you.
All right, so thank you so much, Maureen. You've mentioned so many things. I've been writing notes, I've been in the chat. And I just actually wanted to share with you a little bit of the chat since you've been doing this great presentation. The chat's been buzzing and people have really been talking a lot about what you shared. So far, many of the comments have talked about some of the faculty and staff and the differences between student recruitment, student retention. My bias is that I'm part of SEEK. So when you highlighted some of those students who were in SEEK, that really struck a chord with me. And I definitely encourage people, as we're still talking, to just throw some questions in the chat. We do have time for a couple. And so one thing I just wanted to go back to a little bit was just around, you talked a bit about the kind of like the mental health and just a lot of the things that are going on right now with the pandemic and with, or the dual pandemics, as some people call it, in terms of the, in terms of COVID and also with Black Lives Matter and everything. And I was just wondering what your thoughts were around how, I guess, where do we go from here? So around in terms of mental health and students reaching out to get support on those things, how can CUNY support those efforts of students?
I think that, again, we know, and that's what the last slide was speaking to, creating collective events, you know, virtual or otherwise, where students can share and, I don't know, even if nothing else, listen and hear how other people are coping, because I think that that's very valuable. I think much too much, I think we need to go group rather than individual on this in terms of promoting mental health. I certainly think Black faculty, they need certainly a personal friend, but I think it's much more valuable to sit with other faculty members and staff members and talk about what their experience is as a healing, you know, experience. I wanted to share with you, in terms of my own personal counseling strategies, my goal is to create a vibrant, mentally healthy person. Okay, and they may sound crazy, you know, I mean, that's the highest goal. I fall far short most of the time. But here's what I do. I try to deepen the reality of their goals by having them talk about it and sharing information that I've gotten on the goals, usually before they came, so that they can have a deeper appreciation of that. Also, following the work of Helen Marcus, she did social psychologist that did a work called Possible Selves. And what she documented was that the more detailed your image of yourself in a particular career, you know, like they say, visualize everything as much as you can, that will make that image more real for you, and therefore you'll be more motivated to try to achieve it. Also, I try to identify student strengths. I let them tell me what they think their strengths are, and then I tell them what I think theirs is. I have them tell me their proudest times. I affirm any proactive thoughts and behaviors that I see coming from them, and I identify people and environments that I thought will stretch them and again continue the validation process.
Yeah, and yeah, you mentioned, I think, so many great steps, and even just rewinding a little bit to what you mentioned. So you mentioned the ideas of groups and just giving that support, and also fostering a mentally healthy person. I think that even just reminds me of the idea that we also need to look at students as not just students, like as people. Because I think sometimes that's also what's missing, is that we talk a lot about the academic piece and, recruitment, retention, and just those numbers, but we don't always take the time to really think about the mental health piece and how, if someone's not doing well mentally, it's going to be hard or even more of a challenge to really do well academically and just be a whole person.
Well, you know that famous quote by James Baldwin, to be conscious in America is to be in a state of rage all the time.
Yes. And even in a training I went to the other day, it talked a little bit about being a critical lover of the system. So oftentimes we're in the system right now, whether we're talking about CUNY or just the other systems that everyone's watching that you all are in, but we need to be critical of those systems and hold those systems accountable, and have a love-hate relationship sometimes with those, and maybe have that anger help to drive us forward.
That's why I think it's so important for different ethnic groups to talk to each other and know each other's history, because then they will find out they have so much more in common than they have that is different.
And so we have a couple of questions in the chat. One question I want to highlight, and that was exactly the one, is from Farah. Hey, Farah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, Farah. Yeah, you've got a lot of people who've known you for a long time watching and showing their support in the chat. And so Farah's question is...
You can see in the product how much I miss you, Farah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think people definitely, she's saying, hey, right now, people definitely miss you there as well.
She was in case people don't know it, she was my right hand, and actually she was the director for 10 years here.
And so in the
Olivier, oh my God,
it's like a reunion right now. And so the question that Farah asked, I think, was a good one. I mean, there's so many great questions. And so this one said, in the last year of working with students during COVID and Black Lives Matter, how are you observing BIPOC students that are in a constant state of crisis versus those that have become distressed from the past year?
In you mean they've been before COVID, they were in a state of crisis? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I always try to connect them back to their history, the strengths in their family, or the strength of Black people in general. If you think about the lift every voice and sing, stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening ride, felt when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet brought us to the place for which our fathers strived. And I try to connect them to the strengths that have been displayed in their families to fight people's warts and holes. Just the act of trying to keep a family is heroic.
Yes. And I mean, I think that there have been a lot of paths that people have taken over these years, and we're just sort of standing on the shoulders of the people who've come before us to really tackle, I think, a lot of these challenges, and particularly, again, referencing those pandemics that has been so key. And even kind of as a little bit of a segue, and you can see the comment popping up just around this reunion, So part of the reason this program is going a bit long is because we did have a little bit of a surprise for you. Yes, a surprise for you. So something that and part of the reason why we have so many people here is just that we also wanted to take some time to thank you so much for everything that you've been doing. And so I don't mean this in a way because you're not going anywhere. We're not letting you leave us. And you're not planning to.
About that.
But we just, you do so much. And even as we were putting together everything, and there were many things that I didn't include from your bio, we just wanted to thank you so much and just recognize that you're valued here every day. Not only at CUNY and Queens College, but with the LFSA and just all the different people that you've really influenced, as you kind of see popping up into the chat. And so I just wanted to transition a little bit into a video that we had for you.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Go ahead.
Surprise, Mom.
Oh my goodness.
Downstairs. You've been on the phone with your students for probably the last 2-3 hours or so. And I'm upstairs in the room telecommuting. But right now I just wanted to contribute to this tribute that your colleagues have so thoughtfully arranged for you. I know your job has always been very important to you, and from the time that I was a little girl, I always remember you, probably, I guess, maybe around 10 or 11, getting dressed, the routine, earrings first, and then the outfit, asking me which ones to wear, getting dressed up, working on your projects or presentations, talking so animatedly about your students to your friends and family. I mean, honestly, sometimes I was jealous of your students. But, as a woman now, I understand why they meant so much to you and the impact of your work. And so we're here today to celebrate your work, Mom. And I celebrate you, not only for working so hard throughout the years. I mean, I'm sure people don't know that you used to, when we lived in Brooklyn, commute 2 hours each way just to go all the way out to Queens College. And then when you moved to Queens, of course, it got better. Or you worked really late, or you did things like take your students out to events or musicals, etc. Without compensation. You did it from your heart. And it shows. Because there's so many people who are still connected to you and still highly regard you and truly love you. So I'm proud to celebrate this moment with you. The stars aligned that I should be in New York to be here to do that, and I'm grateful for that. I love you. I'm proud of you, and bravo, Mom.
When I think about my time working with Maureen, I always love to start with the very first time she laid eyes on me, where I was brought into her office and introduced as her new assistant, and she just went, got like a 1-over, and I thought, oh boy, am I in for it? And who would have thought, after 10 years of working together, leaving was one of the hardest things that I had to do. We just had amazing synergy, and when she was high, I was low. When I was high, she was low. We just were so complementary to each other and our work. Something I always think about when I think about Maureen is that as large a task she would give me or a student, it was always the kind of thing where we thought, oh man, how am I going to do this? But she knew before any of us that anything she could give us, we could do. So at the end of the task, when it was done, we learned a little bit about ourselves, that we could accomplish anything, that we could see through a challenge. And I think like that's like the biggest thing that she's taught me is that sometimes you underestimate your ability, and she knows you can do it. You can totally do it. And it's made me really strong, and as a professional and as a student. And she also taught us how to, really see things for what they are and believe what people show you, not what they want you to see. And I guess what her sticker on her portfolio, that well-behaved women seldom make history. And whenever she would say, well, Farah, don't you think that decision's a little hard? Or I would say, but your sticker says this, So she's a maverick. She's tenacious, and she's visionary. And Maureen taught me and everybody, all her students, all her colleagues, to be the same. And I miss her so much, and I miss her for that. But all of those things have been built into my spirit, and the lessons I take with me and work to pass on to others that I mentor, and hope that they do the same.
Good evening, everyone.
Oh
And
my
especially
Lord.
to you, Maureen. It gives me great pleasure to participate in this surprise tribute to you, my longtime dear friend. This tribute is well deserved in light of the many years of service you have rendered to the students on Queens College's campus. Our relationship goes back to June of 1973, when we were both spring chickens beginning our study of psychology in CUNY's Graduate Center. Those years presented us with many opportunities for personal and intellectual growth, and I'm happy to say we took advantage of every one of them. The first thing that impressed me about you, Maureen, was your serious intellect and your commitment to probing beneath the surface of well-established ways of thinking. And when it came time to exploring the role played by Black people in the larger world culture, your probing was fierce and relentless. I began graduate school as a parrot because as an undergraduate, I believed that what counted was my ability to regurgitate. When in graduate school, I awoke to the pleasure of intellectual agency. And I was always impressed by the kinds of questions you would ask about the various theories being discussed. I would say to myself, where does she get those questions? In addition to being the first person I'd met who seriously engaged intellectual issues, you were the only person I knew who loved to buy serious books. In these ways, Maureen, you were my first model for honest intellectual inquiry. I was happy when you began counseling students in the pre-professional program because you had always expressed an interest in direct service. Finally, I thought, you have an opportunity to do the kind of work you cared about. You really came into your own in this position because you saw it as an opportunity to explore strategies for supporting your students in their struggle to conquer the personal issues that prevented them from thriving on campus. Your approach to counseling was therefore creative, and you joyfully transcended what one would normally think of as counseling. Here again, to get at the root of issues, you questioned the boundaries of what was accepted. Happily, many of your students have repaid your dedication by blessing you with their lifelong friendship. Lastly, as the arts are integral to who you are, it makes sense that you would integrate aesthetics into your work with students. As anyone who's visited your office knows, it's a treasure trove of artifacts that present opportunities for discussion and admiration. I believe a person's essence can be discerned from their consistencies. And Maureen, you have consistently combined intellectual inquiry with an abiding concern for others. So you have been a ray of sunshine in a world filled with narrow self-interest and disingenuousness. Maureen, may life always grant you the support you need to continue being the person that everyone loves and enjoys. Hi, Maureen. I did get dressed for this recording. The challenge of talking into the camera and recording myself was too much for my perfectionist streak. I know you understand. Bye now.
Hello, everybody. My name is Donaldson Conserve. I'm an associate professor at the Milken Institute School of Public Health at George Washington University. It is an absolute honor and pleasure to share the impact Ms. Pierre has had on my life. Starting at Queens College into the fall of 2004, where I came from Jamaica High School, and I had very little experience with student organization. I was not a member of any organization really. But after meeting Ms. Pierre, she informed me about the science organization of minority students. And at first, as a pre-med student, I was interested to meet other students who were pre-med or pre-dental and etc. But I was initially very shy. I would go to the meetings and sit, as far back as possible, and to eventually starting to warm up and making friends, I started to feel more comfortable in the group, and so that the mission for helping other students was something I wanted to be more involved in. So I then became a recruiter, and then eventually a vice president and president of the Science Organization of Minority Student. And all of these roles that I played, Ms. Pierre nurtured me and encouraged me to take these leadership roles, which eventually helped me to become more confident. And even now, I'm getting ready to launch a similar organization, not at the college level, but more at the national level, called the Black Male Professors and Researchers Collective. And the mission of this organization will be to help bring Black male professors together and to really carry out the same mission that SOMS stood for, to support one another and provide mentorship for younger Black men who may be interested in research. So I'm very grateful and happy to have had the opportunity to meet Ms. Pierre at Queens College and learn how to serve others and also be there for one another. And that's what I hope to continue doing in this new organization. So Ms. Pierre, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking me from a shy freshman at Queens College to instilling in me the sense of service, leadership, and mentoring. So I appreciate everything you've done for me, and I know so many other students have, felt similarly. And we are very grateful for your impact on all of our lives. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Hi, Mrs. P.
Oh my goodness, Pierre.
Happy Black History Month. We wanted to say thank you to you. We are so grateful that you are here with us celebrating the Black History Month, because you've been part of this program for a long time. I remember years ago we celebrated the anniversary, the 200 years of Haitian independence, and you played a major role in it. We know also that you've been in the trenches fighting for a long time for the inclusion, diversity, and equity. The words that are now catching up, Black Lives Matter. And as we celebrate Black History Month, we have to remember those who came before us, who are no longer here, but who really left their mark. People like Fatou Kojo, George Priestley, June Bob, obviously Jessica Harris. All these people did contribute a lot to making this campus what it is today. They were the trailblazers that set up the path for us. And you are part of those people. You've been there, you've been a friend, a supporter. Boy, how many students have you changed their lives, right? From Ferenc Lafargue to Donaldson Conserve, so many others today that are just having a great life, very successful in their career because of you. So we just didn't want to wait, to just say that to you. It's about time. We say thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next year on campus. And as always, I will drop by your office when I don't hear from you in a few weeks. Every time I would just go by. And thank you also for being part of the Mellon program. You were really instrumental in choosing the students, in making a difference on campus. And I'm sure that this is going to continue when we all go back next year. Thank you, thank you.
I count it such a pleasure to be able to say a few words in honor of who I consider to be one of our griots here at Queens College. Maureen, you have been a guiding light for me and for many other Black women on our campus and for many faculty and staff of color. We have worked together on projects, you and I, and your sharp intellect and your ability to ask the deeper questions and dive in deeper to the information have always been a source of insight for me, and I've learned so much from you. More importantly, you have been a partner in crime to help save so many students of color that have been victims of academic microaggressions. You have provided wisdom, you have provided solace, you have provided invaluable advice and resources for our students. We appreciate your contributions and we want to honor your legacy here at Queens College. You have done great work, Maureen. You have uplifted, you have advocated for our students. So today we want to make and hold tiny space to express our heartfelt gratitude and say to you, thank you, Maureen. Thank you.
Good evening, all. My name is Evelyn Brumis. I was the director of the Africana Studies program at Queens College. I am very flattered to be here with you tonight to celebrate Black History Month, but more importantly, I'm also here in the spirit of Black History Month to honor a good friend of mine, Mrs. Maureen Pierce-Anyan, the counselor and director of Minority Student Affairs at Queens College. I met Miss P.A., we call her Miss P.A., when I began teaching at the Africana Studies program at Queens College in the year 2001. She often invited me to her office to partake in the many events for the preparation and celebration of Black History Month. When I became the director of the Africana Studies program, we collaborated together, preparing, discussing on significant events to bring to the college, events which will educate our students of all backgrounds, to inform them of the true history of Africans, African Americans, Caribbean people, their contribution to this country and practically the world. A history that has been so often neglected, misunderstood, and more habitually fabricated. I would like to emphasize how she was revered and still is by the students. She was always there for them as a mentor, a counselor, guiding them around the campus, advising them in their quest on education and their pursuit for a master's degree and or have a PhD degree. They speak so highly of her. You can see in their eyes and attitude the love they have for Miss P.A. I recall one day I was in her office. A picture on the wall caught my attention, and I said to myself, this woman in the picture looks like Miss P.A. And I also said, but I've seen this picture before. And lo and behold, it was the picture of Ida B. Wells Barnett, who was in her own right a leader of the early civil rights movement of the late 19th century and early 20th century. And also she was a co-founder of the NAACP. Miss P.A. Ida B. Wells Barnett, has her own legacy as an ardent activist for racial equalities. And you have yours as well by being a champion for minorities to have equal access to higher education. And many students at Queen's College have achieved their dreams because of you, and many are giving back to the communities today. Miss P.A., I was privileged to have worked with you when I was at Queen's College. May the good Lord bless you for work well done. All the best to you and your family.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much, everybody. That was really special. So unexpected. Honest to goodness. I don't know how you pulled that off, but thank you. Thank you so much.
And here's also another surprise.
Oh my God, you got your courier.
Oh, I'm supposed to read this for you, Mom.
Oh, they're beautiful.
I think everybody.
Oh, and I was telling her I wanted to go get some flowers. No wonder she kept saying no.
Everybody knows flowers are
My
their
thing.
favorite. In honor of our elder, your wisdom is a gift from the BLF essay.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to take hundreds of pictures of these. I so appreciate it. And I really want to applaud you and the youthfulness and the energy and the productivity in such a short time that you have been able to achieve. And you're on the mark in what you're asking for, and I'm sure you have the energy and the resoluteness to exercise oversight on some of the things that you've asked for. So I look forward to, as Angela Davis says, this is a new time, a new beginning, and I'm glad I've lived to see this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maureen, because, you know, as you can tell by the videos and also in the chat, you've sort of paved the way for a lot of people in support. You've been a listening ear to many people. And even as someone who's only recently met you, you're someone who even I feel like I could go to and just talk about a lot of these things and help to move forward. And I guess just one other thing I do want to highlight as we wrap up was a comment made by Emily. And she said that this chat is literally the living example of Sankofa. We look back to help us understand the path before us, and we see where we have come from. So I think that this is a really good note to end on. And just for those watching, and in terms of thinking about, where do we go from here? What are our next steps? I do also want to take a second and mention an upcoming program later this week talking about Sikh history of activism and dissent in diversifying CUNY. What's next for special programs? So thank you to all who joined us. Thank you for everyone who was in the chat. And most importantly, thank you, Maureen, for your work here and also for your great presentation about everything.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure looking at you, Alice and Regis. Your star is going to be high in the firmament. I'll look for it.
Thanks.
Good night, all. Thank you.
Good night.